2021 한반도 국제평화포럼
2021 Global Forum for Peace. And this is the last session. Thank you very much for waiting till the end of the event. And we are going to talk about the economic cooperation between North Korea, South Korea, and the U.S. and the Korea Institute, and then we are getting support from the Exchange and the Cooperation Support Association. I would like to invite the opening remarks. First, I would like to invite Mr. Kang Young-sik, who is the chair of the South North Korea Exchange and Cooperation Support Association. Hello, I'm Kang Young-sik, who is the head of the South North Korea Exchange and the Cooperation Support Association. Thank you very much for joining us here today. This is the final session of the 2021 Korea Global Forum for Peace. Thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule, and thank you for joining us online and offline. Mr. Chun Sang-jik and President Park Chan-mo and all the people who made efforts, thank you very much. And we are lack of trust between the two Koreas, so we have COVID-19 and the sanction. And there are lots of issues that make our relations difficult. However, both Koreas and U.S. want to have the stable management on the Korean Peninsula, and we have been making efforts. And there have been lots of positive signs from the U.S. administration. We have opportunities and the risks at the same time. This is high time for us to find out the creative way for bringing the peace on the Korean Peninsula. And we are talking about the potential economic cooperation between the two Koreas and U.S. so that we can build peace and prosperity, and we can talk about economic cooperation for the clean energy railway system and the ecosystem. Once again, thank you very much for joining us, and especially President Park, thank you very much, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you for the remarks, and we would like to invite Mr. Chun Sang-jik, chairperson of Korea National Strategy Institute, for the welcoming remarks. Today we gathered here at the Federation of Korean Economy, and this is the Korea Global Forum for Peace. We invited many experts to learn their insights. It is very meaningful to have this event. In particular, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, now many audiences are participating all around the world through YouTube. I would like to extend my gratitude, and I sincerely welcome all of you. In particular, in the KGFP 2021, the South North Korea Exchanges and Cooperation Support Association was invited by the Ministry of Unification, and I also would like to extend my appreciation to Mr. Kang Young-sik for inviting us. Korea has been divided for the last 70 years, and we also had a competition of regime and ideology. But from 2000, the two Koreas are pursuing the path of peace and mutual prosperity. There are the on and off of the relations, but we will not stop entirely. This will be also exemplified by the presentations today. We have Chancellor Park Chan-mo of Pyongyang University of Science and Technology. He was the president of POSTECH, and he has been dedicating himself in North Korean studies. And we also have Mr. Kim Hong-se from JP Morgan and John Perther, who are going to join us online. And we also have President Yoon Gap-gu. And from 2000, through the connection of Russia gas pipeline, they led the KORUS project, which pursued the development of Korea-Russia economic development. And we also have the experts in North Korean economy. He was the president of Unified Economy. And we also invited Director Byun Hang-moon of Research Center for Peace and Unification Movement for One Korea. After releasing his paper on unification and peace and prosperity as an expert in the inter-Korean relations, he has been supporting the inter-Korean exchange. And for this session, we also invited Mr. Byun Jin-young. He majored in North Korean studies, and from the beginning of the private sector exchange, he has been engaging in this activity. Through the economic cooperation, he is promoting the private sector exchange. Challenge provides new opportunities, and it can be a new starting point. Korea sometimes is faced with challenges, but always we look forward and overcome difficulties. I hope this session with various experts can be a place where we can promote the genuine peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula. And once again, I would like to extend my appreciation for your participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the welcoming and the congratulatory remarks, Mr. Kang and Mr. Chun. Thank you very much. Now we are going to start the presentation and discussion. And I would like to pass up the microphone to Mr. Byun Jin-young, who is the director of the Korea National Strategy Institute. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the welcoming remarks and the opening remarks. Thank you. This is the final day, final session. When you listen to other session, you may be wondering why we have the opening remarks and the welcoming remarks. And KNSI and the Exchange and Support Association were preparing separately. And we were invited at the same time. That is why we combined the session together. And once again, thank you very much for providing lots of the support. The topic is the inter-Korean and the U.S. economic cooperation for the peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula. This can be the concluding remarks coming from the 3 days of the discussion. If the John Biden administration is taking the military option or going for the maximum pressure, or it can step away from the maximum pressure, in that case we can have the peaceful economy starting on the Korean Peninsula. And we want to talk about the way forward, and we want to look at the prospects for the peaceful economic cooperation that has been discussed 20 years ago, and the KORUS gas connection was suggested 20 years ago, and the investment was possible in the U.S. We've been working on it for a long time. However, because of the geopolitical issues, we were not able to gain the outcome. We are going to think about the importance of the KORUS project and the gas line project once again, and importance of the economic cooperation. And two people are sending us the message and the video clip from the US. I would like to briefly introduce the speakers, and you are well aware of them, and they are really famous. And first, we have the Park Chan-mo, Honorary Chancellor of the Pyongyang University of Science and Technology. And he was the Chancellor for the post-tech. And he said there is a private university in North Korea, which is the Pyongyang Science Tech, and he's the honorary chancellor. He graduated the SNU, and he got the PhD in the Maryland University. And because of his great achievement and dedication, he got the honorary degree once again. And computer graphic system simulation are the key area of his studies. And he has been working on the 7 years of joint research along with the Pyongyang University of the Science and Technology. The second presenter is Isaac Kim, Vice President of the Kim Eung-se. He will be showing his video presentation. He was a physics major in the Pennsylvania University. After graduation, he started to work for the Bear Stearns, and he became the credit risk expert, and now he works for the JP Morgan. And Mr. Keto Wharton and the John Petter are close friends to Roy Kim, and Roy Kim is his elder brother. And currently, he is working for the JP Morgan, and he is interested in investing in this Chorus project. And this is really meaningful that Mr. Kim is joining us. And the third presenter is Mr. Yoon Gap-gu. He is the president of the ACE Engineering. And he has the international certification for his engineering, and he is expert in the hydropower and the thermal power and the nuclear power. And he's been working with other people so that he can create the Chorus pipeline. And he's the one who was in charge of the Chorus pipeline. And he's going to tell us about the green energy infrastructure and the railroad development as South-North Intra-Korea Economic Cooperation. There will be presentations and a panel discussion. In the panel discussion, and there will be comments from the discussants, and then there will be answers from the presenters. After that, we are going to look into the YouTube. For those of you who are joining on YouTube, you can raise a question. For the presenters, you have 20 minutes, and for the discussants, you have 10 minutes. I would like to invite Chancellor Park Chan-mo. Please give him big hands.
Distinguished organizer, thank you very much for inviting me in this special event. The topic I would like to talk about is the science and technology cooperation between the three countries, South Korea, DPRK, and the U.S. From 2000 September, I visited Pyongyang, and for 70 years, I was in PIC in Pyongyang. And we had joint research between PIC and POSTEC. And Pyongyang Science and Technology University was established, and from 2010, we admitted students. And I teach it one classes per semester for 6 months. And in 2017, all the U.S. citizens were banned from entering into the country, so I was not able to enter in the country. And now, due to the COVID-19, the borders are closed down, so we are teaching students online. I'd like to touch up briefly on the changes in North Korea. Then I'll also talk about the science and technology cooperation between three countries and the obstacles, as well as the solutions. We created very good proceedings, so you can read, and I will just explain the pictures. Usually, the pictures are taken by me. In 2000, when I visited the country, there were a lot of restrictions for foreigners, and North Korea was a hermit country. So it is isolated from other countries. But in 2009, December, I'm not sure whether you can see this pointer. This is electric library of Kim Il-sung, and it says that we need to stand on our land and look at the world. And this motto was distributed across the country in many schools. So North Korea realized that they need to also learn about the world. And as you know, a market has developed. According to the recent report, across the country, there were 400 markets, 장마당, and there are 30 장마당 in Pyongyang. And there is a Unification Street and also 장마당, so we visited there frequently. From 2014, when we visit Pyongyang, we had to go through Beijing. But from Gimpo or Incheon, from 2014, we were able to send the baggage directly to Pyongyang. So I believe, in a sense, through cargo, we achieved unification. And Pyongyang people started using the phones, but foreigners were not able to use a phone because they need to keep the phone at the airport. But from 2013, we were able to use our own phone, and foreigners were allowed to use the internet. Previously, when we took the pictures, all the films were monitored. But when we use the cell phones, we can just take picture and send the picture online and erase it. So these monitoring was eased. And on the right side, you can see the cell phone I used in Pyongyang. When we make a phone call to the U.S., it was really expensive, $5 per minute. And later, when I communicate with my wife located in the U.S., we used WeChat or KakaoTalk. I was able to do that because in Pyongyang Science and Technology University, we had an access to the internet. Internet is not available in any other region. And on the street, I met children, and we took picture together with professors of the university. And as you can see in the picture, Eric Schmidt from Google visited the Grand Library, but 중앙일보 released a picture saying that this is a Pyongyang Science and Technology University. And 3 Nobel laureates also visited Pyongyang, and they visited the Kim Il-sung University, Kimchek Science and Technology University, and Pyongyang Science and Technology University, and provided seminar. In 2000 September, I visited PIC, and the computer available at the time were Pentium 3. However, in 2012, there is a Hewlett-Packard, Acer. There are a variety of options. Nowadays in North Korea, tablet PC is popular. They call this as Panyang computer. And by using TV, they can get the education, just like the education channel in Korea. And Manmulsang is an e-commerce platform. But individuals cannot access to this. This is for B2B. And Kim Jong-un emphasized artificial intelligence and virtual reality. So they use this virtual reality in education. HTC released the headgear, and it is only $500 per unit, and they do not purchase the software because they use their own software. After Kim Jong-un took the power, they provided preferential treatment to scientists. So they created a bulk for scientists, such as the Satellite Scientist Complex, Future Scientist Street, and Yeomyeong Street. Every year they establish new streets for scientists, but I have concerns. They build the housing really fast, so I'm concerned about the safety of the buildings. These pictures are widely available in the media, but I would like to emphasize one thing here. In North Korea, they use solar power because the energy supply is not adequate. So on the left bottom, you can see the solar panels on the window. So during the blackout, they can use the lighting, and they can also heat the water. And to use labor force, they have the concept of 70 days battle or 200 days battle. And even during the weekends, during this period, people need to work. From the chancellor of the Pyongyang Science and Technology University, they actually have 2 chancellors, North Korean chancellor and foreign chancellor. And even university chancellors needed to work, and they had severe complaint because ration was not sufficient. In the past, the ration was enough, but now the ration is not sufficient. That's why many people complain. And in 2018, North Korea announced that they already completed nuclear development and they will focus on people. So we had big hope. There was a Singapore summit, Hanoi summit, and in my opinion, it was Trump's top-down approach, and that was the problem, I believe. I took this picture. We are reviewing the dissertation of North Korean students. So on Skype, students make presentation, and at least out of 12 members, 8 foreign professors review the paper. when we work on the trilateral science and technology cooperation, eventual goal is internationalization. I do not use the term of reform and opening because they do not like it. But ultimate goal is becoming a part of the Western society. To do that, we need to establish a trust and win-win model. And another goal is creating a peace between the two Koreas. If we achieve the unification right away, then there will be a lot of side effects. So we should be gradual. And eventually we need to achieve peaceful unification. And this peaceful reunification and coexistence can also contribute to the global peace. So I would like to make an emphasis on science diplomacy because there is no border in science. And during the Cold War, the U.S. and Soviet Union were good at in science diplomacy. That's why they were able to establish the space station. And as for the afforestation issue, the U.S., UK, and North Korea are working together through this science diplomacy. And Pyongyang Science and Technology University can be at the center. And through this science diplomacy, I believe we can be very helpful in reunification. Let me tell you about the Science and Technology Cooperation Plan. We can have joint science conference. We can do the joint study and educate young talent in North Korea. Education is very important because it can affect for the next 100 years. So we can teach those young people. And in North Korea, we can hold international conference, send students to other countries, and do some field trip. When I was in Pyongyang Science and Technology University or PIC, I did all these activities. And with love and reconciliation, we need to pursue peace and coexistence and eventually announce the end of the war and create a peace agreement and establish a liaison office. These are the achievements. International academic conferences were held. The first one is the International Conference on Computer Processing of Korean Language. From 1994, every 3 years we held. And this conference was helpful in building trust in North Korea. We need to meet. Scientists need to meet together. That is the best way. But we were not able to hold this conference in Pyongyang, so we held this in other countries such as Japan or China. But we wanted to do this in the Korean Peninsula. That's why we established another conference called Korean Conference on Science and Technology in 2006. And in 2007, we held this subcommittee meeting on chemistry. And joint study was also promoted with PIC, Pyongyang Information Center. And Syracuse University worked with Kim Chek's engineering school to establish e-library. In 1995, when we held the international conference in Yeongil, this picture was taken. And always we need to have this kind of documents. So, in order to hold the Korean Conference on Science and Technology, South Korea, Japan, China, the representatives gathered together and made effort for 1 year. And from 2016 April, we held this science conference. I made a keynote speech, and there was another keynote speaker in biology. Between Postec and Pyongyang Information Center, we carried out joint study. I was invited to Kimchik Engineering University and provided a lecture. I had many complaints because I wanted to talk with students, but I had to give a lecture to professors. And the theme of my lecture was the status and the future perspective of virtual reality, but all the teachers did not know what is the current situation. So eventually, I had a lecture for the students, and they were very active and they engaged in the lecture. So I proposed joint research between Postec and PIC. And in North Korea, the chancellor was not able to do this by himself. So in 2006 April, eventually we had an agreement, and we brought the researchers from Postec to Pyongyang, and for a week we worked with North Korean peers. During the daytime we studied together, and during the nighttime we went to karaoke, and after a week we realized that they are very talented. So the 1 week project was extended to 7 years. This is the outcome of the joint research. One of the outcome is a program called Consor. This is a 3D designing program. When the designer make a drawing for buildings, before building the actual construction, then we can create a virtual buildings, and we can identify the defects, and after correcting the defects we can construct the actual buildings. So there are many benefits of this program. This won the first prize in the national program competition in Pyongyang. And here, the presenter is the research fellow of PIC. And these two people are architects in North Korea. And he is teaching how we can identify the defects in the drawing. And from the U.S., AAAS carried out the joint research on the earthquake on Baekdu Mountain and afforestation in North Korea. Of course, South Korean people provided many support, and in the UK, Royal Society and many other universities also took part in this. And from the US, South Korea, many scientists were sent to North Korea. And we also sent books in relation to science. Previously, North Korea rejected our book. However, now Korean books are available in Kimchik Engineering University Library, and e-books are also available. Many U.S. universities donated their e-books. And in the PIC, there is the Department, International Science Management, Agriculture, Electrical, Computer Engineering, and Foreign Languages School, and Division of Medical School. They have multiple divisions. And this picture shows the collaboration between Syracuse University and Kimchik Engineering University. And they teach English. And at the bottom, President Peter Acri of AAAS went to the Science Institute of North Korea, and he was very positive to North Korean people. And on the right side, at the bottom, you can see the earthquake study of Baekdu Mountain. Mr. Lohman is the beginner and pioneer of science diplomacy. And a forestation team went to North Korea and they had a dinner. And at the bottom, you can see the library of Kim Chaek Engineering University, and these are Korean books. We sent 30,000 books to North Korea. But Kim Chaek University displayed only 7,000 books. On the bottom of right side, you can see the participation of the AAAS fair. And Pyongyang University of Science and Technology is a Christian school. So we provided not just a hard skill, but also soft skills such as humanity. And we are trying to promote the economy in North Korea. And we are trying to teach market economy to young scientists in North Korea. This is the campus. Initially, we admitted only male students, but later we also selected female students. And these are the faculty members, students in Pyongyang University of Science and Technology. Students can have an access to the internet. We can watch YouTube, and this is a project of students. I usually teach animation, and this is hip-hop dancer animation created by the graduate school students, and there was a service. And every 2 years, there was an international conference, but in 2017, we were not able to hold this conference. And graduate school students were dispatched to other countries. And within just 1 year, they received the master's degree. And undergraduate students were sent to China for a field trip. This is a conference. At the time, Nobel laureate Peter Agre was the keynote speaker. And last year in the UK, this picture was taken. There are 2 students studying in Oxford on biology. The university served as a bridge. So PUST participated in various conferences and created a human network. And through reconciliation and love, we pursued peace and coexistence of the 2 Koreas. You can read this later. And we also would like to create a private committee. But there are obstacles. ICBM, SLBM, North Korea should not pursue these missiles. And now limited access is provided to the people. However, we need to open the door to the internet. And due to the sanction from UN and the US, now currency is limited and goods are also limited. After the Biden administration, now the situation is in a stalemate. And this is the plan specified in the joint statement. From the beginning, North Korea focused on education, in particular in science and math. It was a hermit country, but now it is internationalized. I stayed there for 20 years, and I feel this. Many people ask me whether I'm afraid of staying in North Korea, but for 20 years, I've never felt the fear. Personally, they really like people. Pyongyang University of Science and Technology marked its 10th anniversary, and there will be many things it can do. Until we declare the end of the war and sign the peace treaty, we need to establish the liaison office between the two countries, and I hope the situation will be better in the future. Thank you very much. I think I now had a tour in North Korea, so I can learn many things about North Korea. When we visited North Korea, one of the regretful thing is keeping the cell phone at the airport, but now foreigners can carry their own cell phone in the country. After Kim Jong-un took the power, for the last 10 years, many things changed, and we were able to understand this. So thank you very much for the presentation once again.
And now I'd like to listen to the discussion of Mr. Hyun Hang-moon from the Research Center for the Peace and the Unification Movement for One Korea. He's online, and please let me know once he's connected. Please. Mr. Byun, please. And can you see this? And I don't want to dare to raise any opinion against him. I want to ask a few simple questions. As you mentioned, in North Korea, in the Kim Jong-un era, and they are working on the science and technology education. They defined, and the science and technology will define the future. They define the current status as a knowledge economy, in the military. They are making the science and technology driven approach. For the last 10 years, they were working on various measures. In the Eighth Party Congress, they said, for the last 5 years, science and technology made some progress. However, actually, there was not that tangible outcome which contributed to the economic growth, which means science and technology still is a top priority to North Korea, and that is the biggest task given to North Korea. And this policy will be kept for the foreseeable future. As you said, Kim Jong-il in 2009 said that we needed to look around the world, and they are targeting the world, and they want to have the world-class research. In 2010, and they collected a lot of the information from the international community and the international academia. They're working on the joint research along with the international academia, and they want to bring lots of international stuff to their production as well. In the year of 2018, and North Korea was willing to have the cooperation in science and technology. And some of the North Korean researchers actually wanted their papers to be published in Korea, and actually it did. And the mayor and the vice mayor was told that they want to go for the joint research, and the Kim Chek-taek University and the Kim Il-sung University was ready. That's what they told in the 2018 when the relation was really good. However, there has not been detailed discussion about the science and technology discussion between the two. Mainly, people were worried about the sanction against North Korea. The sanction was imposed by UN and the U.S., and they want to prevent the production of the WMD and science and technology. Of course, it can be used for the civilian usage, but it can be appropriated to the military purpose. So, The South Korean government was reluctant to have cooperation in science and technology, and North Korea conducted nuclear tests starting from the period when the sanction got stronger and stronger. North Korea worked on the cooperation for science and technology. In the case of the British Columbia, starting from 2011, the 6 North Korean scholars were introduced and they were trained in the British Columbia. Economic management, and the finance was the key sector, and also the sector was expanded to the STEM area. And they provided some technical workshop to the North Korean citizens. There have been multiple rounds of the workshop targeting thousands of the people. There are lots of the joint international studies that is led by the North Korean scholars. The number increased from 30 to 200. Of course, in Korea, we have the SCI level papers, and the number is tens of thousands. However, still the number is growing in North Korea, and the North Korea is getting into the international academia, and they publish the papers. The North Korean scholars are usually the joint researchers. However, sometimes the North Korean scholars become the first author or the corresponding authors. So there are lots of joint research projects going on. North Korean scholars can have joint research with China and Russia. In the past, the target was the so-called former communist countries. However, now they target the so-called Western countries as a partner for their joint research. And North Korea selected 4 to 6 top-notch scientists in North Korea. Im Sung-jin, who graduated from the Kim Il-sung University, and the Kim Kwang-ho. These 2 researchers worked with the French scholars recently, and last year they published the international paper, and this year they published the international paper. North Korea is trying to adopt the international standard to change their industry practice. GMP and the ISO are being studied, and there are more factories and plants that can meet the standards of the ISO and the GMP. So, for the last few years, they've been making those efforts. It is high time for us to get prepared for the scientific cooperation between the 2 Koreas. The Moon Jae-in administration is almost ended. However, the new Biden administration is coming in. So, what I'm telling you is, for the peace and the prosperity, many people are working together, and the keynote for the U.S. policy toward the North Korea is the peace and the prosperity. In the past, the U.S. government did not mention that explicitly, but they are saying that the keynote is peace and the prosperity on the Korean Peninsula. So that means even during the sanction, there have been lots of the cooperation in the STEM field and the science and technology. It is high time for us to find out more opportunities so that the 2 Koreas can work on these science and technologies. As Chancellor Park mentioned, we can have some training and education exchanges about the science and technology education. And even the e-learning platform can be utilized when we have the training between the 2 sides. And we can share the knowledge and help the North Korea so that they can cultivate their knowledge set. And as Chancellor Park said, we needed to have the committee for the exchange of the science and technology. And there are many exchange centers, and there are many of the so-called knowledge exchange centers. However, what matters is we need to make a preparation so that we can share the information between the two Koreas. That was a proposal in the past, however, that was not fully realized. So, for the preparation of the science and technology exchange between the two, we needed to make a full preparation. We needed to make a long-term plan to help North Korea. In Korea, there were some people who had contact with the North Korean researchers during the Kim Dae-jung administration. Most of them are retired or about to retire, and we needed to refer to them. And if they can help us, we needed to join hands together and we needed to learn from them so that we can have a more systematic approach for the science and technology cooperation between the two Koreas. Under the sanction, we needed to realize the cooperation between the two Koreas. The homework given to us is what we need to do, and we needed to find out in which area we can have the cooperation and what can be the project type that we can work together. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much for the elaboration. Mr. Pyun Hang Moon, thank you very much. And the answer will be taken in the panel discussion. And let's move on to the second speaker. We have Isaac Kim, who is the Vice President of the JP Morgan. And he sent us a video clip, and let's take a look. Good evening. Today, I would like to talk about the Inter-Korean Economic Cooperation Project that combines the foundation for the clear energy economy with the railroad business. I would like to express my gratitude once again to all of you who stayed and listened to this conference until the last hour. The topic I want to talk about is the possibility of getting over the shackles of the national division based on the new possibility coming out of the great economic development. Along with Korea's ever-increasing economic growth, the world's expectation for Korea's role in the international community, including its role in maintaining peace in conflict zones and addressing the refugee issue, is becoming higher and higher. After the Cold War, China emerged as a new communist socialist country, boasting the world's first or second largest economy. On the other hand, the democratic capitalist world, including the U.S., became wary about the rise of China and reached the point where the struggle for hegemony was clearly revealed. Russia, as a loser in the Cold War, has made lots of effort to make it up and has shown a strong containment against the Western democratic forces, including in the case of the Syrian civil war. Geopolitically, the Korean Peninsula is in a position where the continental powers of China and Russia and the maritime powers such as the United States and Japan come across. This kind of conflict of the interest can pose a threat to Korea. But on the other hand, it could be a new opportunity to grow into an economic powerhouse, driving the world peace and security. Today, as we enter the fourth industrial revolution, the structure of the industry and the way of the life and the value that people pursue are changing more rapidly than ever before. Therefore, macroeconomics are also presenting new indicators in accordance with the changes of the industrial structure. So, the task of the reunification between the two Koreas was a wish for me in the past. Now it has become a necessity. The revival of the national consciousness buried by the anti-communist education and the contradiction of the Korean history, which was induced by the colonial authority, confirms that North Korea is our lost brothers. North Korea is not an enemy, but they are not a heartwarming brothers. They are, and they should be an economic partner that we should go with. And at the same time, North Korea should not only play a role in providing abundant underground resources and cheap labor, but should also become a partner in the economy. We should study, work together, and enjoy together. I am confident that such a mutual economic cooperation between the two Koreas will be successful. And the peace networking linking the Northeast Asia will greatly contribute to the economic growth of Korea, as well as easing the security concern in Northeast Asia. All industrial activities require a huge amount of energy. Therefore, stable energy prices and effective supply are essential for the success of industrial activities. The world is leaving the fossil fuel era behind and moving toward the clean energy era. The world economy, which was once dominated by the oil-producing countries, will be dominated by countries that can secure and use clean energy based on new science and technology. It can be seen that the playground that was inclined for the oil-producing countries in the past is now flattening. The clean energy technology is not yet complete, and it is a work in progress. Opportunities will be given to those who work hard, and it is an area where outstanding scientists and engineers from the North and the South can jointly work together. When the fruits of the success are shared, the concept of South and North will disappear from our memories. We will have a single Korea only. Now, let me tell you about the global efforts to combat global warming. The world's response to the temperature change in the Earth's atmosphere, which began to be detected in the 1980s, was weak. However, in recent years, strong winds, rains, especially the wildfire, which frequently occurred as a hurricane, and a lot of rainfalls due to the climate change, made many people displaced. People started to accept the carbon dioxide generated during the burning of the fossil fuel, block heat from escaping out of the atmosphere. People started to buy that idea. The deforestation and the illegal logging around the Amazon River basin brings new attention to the impact on the global warming and on the protection of the forest. And environmental destruction raised our awareness again. Because of the unprecedented virus and the disease, and because of its possible link to the environmental degradation. As a result of the research on the changes in the temperature change, the seriousness of the global warming was recognized. In 1992, a global summit was held in Rio de Janeiro, a tourism and resort city in Brazil. The UN-hosted meeting had leaders of more than 100 countries. Since then, there have been many proposals that can be applied in practice and reduce the actual emission, such as carbon dioxide, such as environmental conference was held in Kyoto, Japan. However, it was not successful due to the opposition from the U.S. Among the measures proposed at this meeting was the payment or the compensation for the planted trees that absorb and remove carbon dioxide. And a kind of carbon tax was created. so-called carbon trade derivative was created, and it made many people disappointed. In the case of North Korea, which is largely dependent on the fossil fuel, a carbon tax may be burdensome, but measures such as reforestation can benefit North Korea, and another co-benefit is that North Korea can prevent natural disasters such as landslide. After that, the United States refused to sign the 2015 Paris Agreement. But by signing it in 2021, now each country started to declare their carbon neutrality. ICT is the core of the fourth industrial revolution. The power consumption required by the AI and the robot technology will be so huge, so it may require the entire Earth to provide the energy. So the first industrial revolution needs clean energy sources. Because we know that the ecosystem destroyed by the global warming will eventually lead to the destruction. Solar power, wind, tidal power, and the hydrogen have already been commercialized, but there are still challenges to be resolved. Ultra-high voltage electricity transmission can utilize the 1 million voltage to distribute the electricity. And this technology can be really helpful. The energy generated from the desert via the photovoltaic tech or the hydropower can be directly served to the consumers. And this can be really beneficial to the consumers. The biggest benefit is that it does not have much energy lost during the transfer. After the Korean War, the economic sanction on North Korea that lasted for about 70 years was really negative. People became shorter, people became smaller, people became malnutritious, and sometimes people died because they do not have the medicine. And people have the hatred against the cause for the isolation. North Korea, however, was able to secure technology such as nuclear weapons and the rocket. But the logic of those who claim the ownership of the firearms in the United States is that the guns do not kill people. Actually, owning a gun can stop violence caused by the guns. Here, we can agree that guns do not kill people and people kill people. I do agree with that. We do not need to be hostile against North Korea just because it has nuclear weapons. Rather, it would be normal and mutually desirable. We have exchanges at the humanitarian level and to make efforts to develop amicable relations. As the friendly relations between the U.S. and North Korea deepens, they will naturally participate well in the denuclearization process and will be given opportunities to contribute to the peace. When relations with South Korea, North Korea, and the United States improve, all sanctions are lifted, and multinational economic cooperation will take place, then the history of the peace and the prosperity will be repeated not only on the Korean Peninsula but also throughout Northeast Asia and on the world. If we look at the steps to procure energy resources required by the first industrial revolution, it is necessary to identify the existing energy infrastructure in South and North Korea and investigate the clean energy resources that can be procured. At the same time, it is necessary to establish the various types of the energy supply plans that can be set for the long term and the short term. And it is also necessary to conduct conduct a feasibility study on the recovery of the thermal power plants built in the former Soviet era in North Korea. It is important to discover young North Korean talent and teach them new knowledge in the era of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Today's technology to obtain eco-friendly clean energy is not a finished product. It is a field that still requires the effort and the sacrifices of the many brains and the scholars. It is a field that no one can or should monopolize. The basic goal should be to enjoy peace and prosperity together through cooperation. In general, it is desirable to have a trade system that can complement the industrial system between countries. However, this is only possible when trading goods are not weaponized to destroy your opponent. We have experienced that Japan's semiconductor materials were weaponized. Russia unilaterally raised the price of the natural gas export to Ukraine and unilaterally shut off the pipeline and cut the supply when Ukraine becomes unable to pay. This caused a cold winter for the Ukrainians, who depended on the natural gas for heating. These are events that clearly show that when the interests of the countries face a crisis, trade can be stopped and it can cause a lot of difficulties to other party. An alternative to this is to minimize the dependence by diversifying the source of the goods. The same logic goes for the energy ecosystem. In the process of transitioning to a complete clean energy system, it is time to reduce the possibility of the energy weaponization with diversification of the import sources and clean energy mixes, including the nuclear and gas. Once again, it is really important to have the diversification. In particular, direct and indirect investment through the resource diplomatic relations with the countries with abundant solar and wind resources can increase mutual benefits. For example, the barren areas of the vast Gobi Desert spanning Mongolia and China can be turned into a solar and wind power plant. The electricity produced here can be delivered to South Korea and even to Japan using the high voltage delivery system. Likewise, it will be possible to use the wind power facilities located on Russian plains nearby the Arctic Ocean and can provide abundant power. Australia's vast desert regions also have abundant solar resources and wind power. Based on the electricity generated, a hydrogen production facility is in operation, and it will be expanded in the near future and ready for export. Korea has the gas cooling shipbuilding technology. It's possible to transport liquid hydrogen, and the liquid hydrogen can be exported to China and Russia. And in the case of North Korea, it will be possible to invest in new industrial facilities by receiving a transit fee. The development of the new and renewable energy through multinational cooperation can be supplied to consumers. When we have such an energy network, it will bring the pure benefit to the consumers, and the network will eventually become the peace network. As mentioned earlier, Korea, which is geographically located where the continental powers and the maritime powers meet, is highly likely to form a new platform platform that enables stable energy supply and trade with competitive prices. As such, a new trading platform is formed. There is a possibility that it can develop into a trading platform for the financial and real energy commodities and the products. Therefore, it is highly likely that Korea will develop itself into a hub of the clean energy. The human civilization was developed based on the trade and exchanges. During the fourth industrial revolution, the logistics will increase exponentially and will cover every part of the earth. And the role will be taken by the trains that can carry people and goods. The driving force for the train will be the hydrogen electricity, which will connect the South and North Korea and run on the plains of the China and Russia. The North Korean railroad linking the Aleutian Islands and the Alaska via land rail across the Bering Strait, powered by the civil engineering, will have the impact of bringing the two continents together. In conclusion, as the first industrial revolution is established as we enter the threshold of the 21st century, various changes in the industrial structure began to appear. The theme of the 2016 World Economic Forum held in Davos in Switzerland was the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It is a place where influential political economic scholars from all over the world gather together to discuss the key issues for the mankind, present and future. What is special is that the clean energy is required for the first revolution, and electricity is really required. I mean, the clean electricity. And what is changed by the first industrial revolution is not limited to the industry. The founder of the forum, Dr. Klaus Schwab, projects that the basic order of the mankind itself will be destroyed. Therefore, the topic was to understand, prepare, and cope with the fourth industrial revolution. Amid the predicted changes, we will have to find a new meaning for resolving the division issue between South and North. Fundamentally, South and North Korea must end their political, military, and diplomatic hostility. Free movement and the cultural exchanges should be realized so that the conflicts and the distrust between the nations can be resolved as soon as possible. At the same time, transportation facilities such as roads, railroads, ports should be made as soon as possible. However, it should start with the construction of the clean energy infrastructure along with the continuous efforts to rebuild the North-South economy through the long-term plan. In addition, multinational government-level capital support on the Marshall-level plan scale is necessary for the reconstruction of the industrial facilities in North Korea. The clean energy infrastructure should be connected between North and South, and we can be the true winner of the peace system. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Kim, thank you very much for talking about the confrontation on the Korean Peninsula, but the Korean Peninsula can be the zone where the confrontation can be mitigated, and that was a good prospect for the future. For this presentation, and there was a document sent by the President, Mr. John Petter, and let me summarize what he sent. The Koros PNG, Koros Natural Gas Pipeline project, was something that he mentioned. This project is connecting the Sakhalin Island to Korea, which is 2,300 kilometers. The project has been initiated by the FSI and in cooperation with the U.S. ROK and DPRK governments. This economic and this started from the Lazarov and covering the Vladivostok. And then the pipeline goes through North Korea and following the railway, it is going through Wonsan and connected to the DMZ. It can be connected to the Korean railway system. And that is in line with the new economic picture that Korea has. And if we can make a progress between the agreement between the two, there will be some tangible outcome. In the case of North Korea needs energy, and the natural gas can be the cheapest clean energy option to North Korea. North Korea has many coal-fired power plants, and if they can have the cogeneration based on the clean energy, it can be really effective. FSI and in Korea Engineering, coal gas are joining hands together to build the Chorus pipeline, and the Chorus pipeline development company was created. And it is pursuing the source of the new clean energy sources. That is the plan of the FSI. And they got the MOU with the Hyundai Corporation already. And also for many of the gas companies, they have made a contract. FSI has experience in developing the good relations with the Russia and DPRK. And they got the exclusive negotiation already with the DPRK. For mid and the long term, this project was not progressing. There are some issues, and those issues needed to be resolved. The two Koreas and the U.S. need to think about this project again, because the energy needs can be met in the region and a stable, peaceful economy can be achieved through this project. And it is urgent that we need to work on this project. And that is the message to the Biden administration. And he sincerely hopes that this kind of voice can be delivered to the Biden administration. Chorus pipeline will help the economic, energy stability, and the peace development in Northeast Asia. This is the best and the cheapest option for the provision of the clean energy. This can contribute to the integration of the economy, energy, and also this can be the driving force for the clean and sustainable development. We are a bit behind the schedule. So I'm going to invite the third speaker. We needed to speed up a little bit.
The third presentation is the last one, and the title is Building a Resource Economy Ecological Network to Lead Greenpeace, and the presenter is Kapgu Yoon from ACE Engineering. I believe you have many things to present, and I think you'll emphasize the Greenpeace and the economy ecological network. It is a very comprehensive topic, but we have limited time, so please be brief and concise. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. Thank you very much for inviting me to this 2021 Korea Global Forum for Peace. The title of my presentation is Building a Resource Economic Ecological Network to Lead Green Peace. Creating this network is aiming at creating peace community, not just between the two Koreas, but also in the Northeast Asia, Eurasia, Europe and Asia Pacific area, and the entire world is our target. And in preparation for the climate change, we are preparing for this project. And now we can see the COVID-19 pandemic, and one of the goal is prevention of the communicable disease. For this peace community, inter-Korean economic cooperation is required. And to do this, previous administrations have done lots of activities. First, July 4th joint statement. In 1991, there was a basic agreement, and in 2000, June 15, there was a June 15 Inter-Korean Joint Declaration, and it evolved continuously. In 1972, President Park Chung-hee had a director, Lee Hoo-rak, and he went to Europe, and eventually it led to a July 4th Inter-Korean Joint Statement. And inter-Korean solidarity was one of the three principles in the statement. And 1 year before that, I went to Japan for a study, and I was a staff member of TEPCO, and by using the substation and telephone, we can give instructions. So at the time, we operated the grid manually, but I went to Japan and learned that we can use computerized system to control the grid, and we can use automatic power supply and the microwave system and digital communication was the topic I studied. And I realized that this can be the key to reunification of the two Koreas, and it can also develop the economy of the world. So I created a plan and came back to Korea. And I wanted to evolve the grid, not just in South Korea, but also in North Korea. But at the time, when I went to Japan, I used the official passport, and it took 1 year. And in Japan, there was an instruction from the government. The central government gave me an instruction, and they said that we should not read anything written in Korean. In North Korea, they welcome foreigners who speak English, but they do not welcome the people who speak Korean. And in Japan, I read newspapers, and I read the article in relation to DPRK. So I thought that DPRK is Korea, not North Korea. So that was the time I lived through. But the time evolved, and in 2000, June 15, at the time the president was Kim Dae-jung, and Kim Dae-jung was a presidential candidate. And I suggested the concept of peace network. Obviously, I also suggested the same concept to then presidential candidate Lee Hwae-chang. And my proposal was connecting all the grids, power grids between the RK, DPRK, China, and other countries. So the broad power grid was one of the presidential promise. The previous speaker also mentioned the peace network. So peace network was also the name of the integrated power grid in the region. With this peace network, how can we trust Russia? How can we trust China when we are in a hostile relation? So there was a trust issue. And after the study in Japan, I released a paper in relation to the Tuma River, Northeast Asia region, and it is about the security enhancement by connecting the power grid. My theory is enhancing the security by connecting the grids. And people said that I need to present this in other countries instead of Korea. So I went to Japan, and in front of 200 technicians, I presented my paper, and it was really well received. And I also had a chance to visit North Korea with Japanese technicians. And we thought how we can cooperate on the power grid in the Northeast Asian region. We actually did the field inspection. An integrated energy plan was needed. The solution was integrated resource plan. Our power generation is for electricity, and the energy source can be uranium, water, coal, or oil. So we use the primary energy, which can be the main source. In Korea, we produce the coal, but it requires a lot of labor because mining was a labor-intensive industry. Then should we rely on import of coal? Should we use gas or oil? Depending on the primary source of the energy, the economy can be different. And the origin of the energy can be also different, whether it is Indonesia or Canada. So we reviewed this whole process that is called as integrated resource planning. In the past, energy conservation and load management were separated. We just focused on the supply of energy, and according to the plan, we made an investment in power plants. But if there is a demand management, then we can enhance economic feasibility. During the nighttime, we can generate power at a lower cost, and we can store the energy and spend it for the heating the space or heating the water. So supply and demand can be managed together in this plan. And worldwide power system interconnection is one concept you can find at the end of the chart. Before Korean War, our grid were connected together. And at the time, South Korea was relying on North Korea because there were not many power plants. But after Korean War, the grid was disconnected and Korea was like an island. But we can connect the line with Japan and enhance the economic feasibility. That's why I proposed worldwide power system interconnection. An energy service company can be created. In the past, we used the fluorescent light, but efficiency was low. Now we use LED, and it consumes less energy while providing better efficiency. And KEPCO was the main source of power generation, but KEPCO can be divided into multiple private companies so that they can compete with each other, generating power at lower cost. So deregulation and competition was the ultimate goal. In 2001, I retired from KEPCO, and I created a company called Peace Network Company with the former CEO of KEPCO. That's why I'm presenting this today. More specifically, let me introduce our proposal. Before the Korean War, right before the Korean War, due to the relations, South Korea received the power from North Korea. North Korea had the power plant and we had substation and received the power. But in 1948, May 14th, North Korea cut the power line, and at the time we were under the ruling of the U.S. military. North Korea asked for the payment, but we had only a small number of money, so the payment was made in kind, but eventually it was cut. I was at the Central Control Center, and when North Korea cut this line, South Korea was relying on North Korea for power supply. So after this cutting, South Korea was in dark. But now we can compare the electricity situation between the two Koreas. The power generation capacity in South Korea is 14 times bigger than North Korea. In the past, North Korea had the greatest capacity than South Korea, but now we have a greater capacity, and power production is 24 times. So when we reunify the country, North Korean situation is worse than South Korea. As Isaac Kim mentioned, in order to achieve exchange at the borderline, we first need to improve the North Korea, and we should become the similar economic status. And once we make the investment in North Korea, we can achieve reunification, and combining the economies in North Korea and South Korea, we can become one of the great economy in the world. But building power plants require money and investment. So the first step is connecting the grid together between the DPRK and RK. But electricity is imported good because we import oil, gas, and uranium. So electricity is convenient, but still we are relying on foreign countries in importing the primary source of the energy. So we cannot just give the electricity. We need to consider what we can give and what we can receive. Russia has a hydropower plant, especially in the Far East area. And from Far East area to North Korea, we can connect together and we can sell and purchase the electricity. Then part of the electricity can be provided to North Korea, but there is a problem. When Russia sends the power to South Korea, there are risks that North Korea may shut down the line or North Korea steal the line. And there are deviation. Russia has a 60 cycle and Korea has a 50 cycle. So there should be substation and the electricity should be sent in direct current. But this cost for building and maintaining the substation is really expensive. And through this, I believe we can enhance mutual security. And on top of this, we can also exchange natural gas. The yellow line indicates natural gas and green line shows electricity. Between China, North Korea, and Korea, we can receive the gases and electricity and we can share electricity. Then it can be mutually dependent trade and it can also enhance mutual security. I will skip this part. In North Korea, they tried to build a nuclear power plant, but it was suspended and the coast is becoming a sunken cost. Light water nuclear power plant can be built, but the problem is the treatment of nuclear fuel. Making plutonium is not that easy. However, we need to prevent the retreatment of nuclear fuel to prevent nuclear missiles. So maybe we can consider thorium. Thorium has economic feasibility and there are a lot of deposits of thorium. So we had a discussion. Can you shorten the presentation? In European region, they wanted to manage coal and steel at the community level. It evolved into EU. After the unification of Germany, East Berlin and West Berlin were disconnected in terms of grid, but they reconnected it. But after 16 days, the reconnection was taking place because of the poor condition of Eastern Germany. However, the power plant stopped, and eventually it led to the blackout in the entire Berlin region. And Russia and China are working also together. In the past, they were enemy, but now they connected the grid, and they are increasing the volume of the exchange of the electricity. By doing so, as you can see in the picture, we can create this peace network. This pigeon is the logo of peace network. And here you can see the Russian flag. From Russia to China to North Korea to South Korea, and eventually can be connected to Japan, and it can be again connected to Russia, and Russia can be also connected to EU. So when there is any disconnection or fault, we can provide electricity still, so it can be mutually dependent network. And our ultimate goal is connecting this to the U.S. and Alaska. That's why we have all these flags in the Peace Network logo. And the key word of this presentation is green peace. And Power Economy and Green Environment Association, or Green Renewable Energy Ecosystem Network, can be created. And we can set a pipeline through North Korea to connect to Russia. And Russia sold gas line, and they also got the benefit of building the pipeline. So this gas line or electricity line should be built through the investment of the U.S. That's why I'm proposing this association. And all others are just a reference. Please refer to those slides. We need to work together. Thank you very much. Please give him a big round of applause.
And he is the board of the directors in my institute. Sorry, I was not able to give you enough time. And we have Professor Lee Sang-man, and Professor Lee will give a wonderful discussion. And Professor Lee Sang-man is ready. And he's been participating in many of the societies and many of the organizations. I would like to invite Professor Lee for his commentary. Please welcome him with big hands.
Thank you very much, President Lee. It was a very good presentation and a lot of things to watch. But due to the limited time, you were not able to present everything. But I read all the data, so I understand how wise this plan is. But let me make two comments. Because of the limited time, I believe moderator want to finish the session in time. So I will make two comments. First, as you know, in East Asia, he is an expert in supergrid and inter-Korean cooperation. Then why should we work together between the two Koreas in electricity? In Pyongyang, I met the officials, and 90% of the topic is related to electricity shortage. And in the winter time, they do not have enough electricity because North Korea is relying on hydraulic power. So electricity cooperation is one of the areas North Korea wants to promote. And due to this power shortage, North Korea cannot enhance its economy. That's why this is important. Between the two countries, we first need to establish interdependency, otherwise we cannot institutionalize this. And without the institutionalize, we cannot pursue economic cooperation. So the first step is the interdependency, and electricity is the best topic. That's why we need to pursue this. So the presentation from President Yoon is very meaningful. Now we don't have the denuclearization, and sanction is ongoing, so people may ask, when can we pursue this? However, we first need to establish the energy community. Otherwise, we cannot develop the energy even after reunification. What is more important is, in the current administration, they announced the Peace New Deal. This is the expansion of Korean New Deal to North Korea. And here the key is Green New Deal. Green New Deal can be extended to the entire Korean Peninsula. This is an expression of willingness for inter-Korean peace. Now the world economy is turning the tides. In the past, it was a red economy, but it is turning into the green economy. Low carbon green economy is one of the competitiveness of national economy. In this sense, the government is pursuing Green New Deal. And here, what is the most important? The fundamental one is inter-Korean Green New Deal cooperation. That changes the framework. It is Korean peace system. We need to come up with concrete and comprehensive plan for green cooperation. So the proposal of the President Yoon can show the direction of Korean cooperation. Last but not least, as a person who studied inter-Korean economic cooperation for the last 30 years, I can say that there are two changes recently. Previously, we focused on forestry project or large-sized projects, but recently we can see change from North Korea, especially the change from the bottom, and the key is marketization of North Korean economy. Now, North Korean people is friendly to the market. In the past, there was a dichotomy between the market and the government. However, now North Korea is taking a path similar to the Vietnamese model. So we can facilitate the marketization of North economy through the economic cooperation. This is a paradigm shift, and as President Yoon said, the second change is green peace. As I mentioned before, the global economic paradigm is shifting toward low-carbon green economy. If we fail to seize the green ocean, then we cannot be successful. Green economic strategy is required not just in South Korea, but also in the entire Korean Peninsula. Without North Korea, it is just a half-baked outcome. then how can we expand this to the entire Korean Peninsula? There are many obstacles. First, there is a huge gap between the two Koreas. I went to North Korean factories and I can see that there is a 30-year gap. Still, North Korea is focusing on the heavy industry, chemical industry. And we create a casino, a golf course. There are indiscriminated natural development. But in Korea, we adopted low carbon green growth. How can we spread this to North Korea? So the first step is connecting the grid between the North Korea and South Korea. We can work on green cooperation to enhance the potential of North Korean economy. So we can set this as an agenda for the entire Korean Peninsula. And we need to move away from the previous economic cooperation model. We need to see this from the perspective of green growth. Then we can pursue this in accordance with green growth. In this sense, green peace system and the ecological community can be harmonized with the inter-Korean economic cooperation. Let me tell you the conclusion. If President Yoon has time, please consider the grid reconnection together with green economic cooperation between the two Koreas. Fortunately, North Korea announced something recently. North Korea announced its own review on 2030 agenda. And we are interested in the theme 13 in the SDG. Theme 13 is related to climate change. And North Korea also made lots of comments on this. And North Korea wants to pursue a partnership. So, having this grid network and resource network can be the systemic direction. Thank you.
Thank you. I should have managed time better. So there were some video messages. Please understand that. And we listened to all the presentation and all the discussion. And Professor Moon and Dr. Jang Woo-jin, who is the Energy Research Center, asked the question. The question is almost the same. When we are considering the international conditions, and we can have the multilateral cooperation, and is there a way for making this as a international cooperation? We can have the connection to the southern Russian power grid, but the political tension is high. And is there a way for the international cooperation we can separate the economic sector from the political sector? As we are running out of the time, we cannot have more discussion. And as you know, Mr. Kim Eun-se actually sent his video message, but we are not able to play the video clip, and please understand that. Last but not least, I would like to ask Mr. Park and Mr. Yoon 1 minute each for the final answer.
Professor Pyun asked a very specific question. At the Pyongyang University of Science and Technology, how it can help South Korean companies. Actually, in the university, there is RMBD, Research and Business Development Center. And through this research center, we can have a sub-center at companies and universities and carry a joint study. So the PUST can work in collaboration. And under the sanction, how I think about the inter-Korean cooperation, eventually the sanction is not just a sanction. I believe there are many problems in the sanction and secondary problems as well. So the Korean government and the U.S. government need to reconsider this sanction at the UN level. Thank you very much. And President Yoon, please make brief. The best way to address the problem is just like this forum. We need to establish more opportunities for a dialogue. Professor Byun is a Secretary General of the Religious People, and he also contacted many people who are in neutral. One of the suggestions was enabling the separated family members to meet online through the internet. So these suggestions made in this session, even though I cannot present everything due to the limited time, President Byun, President John, and President Kang, we can work together to create this discussion platform. At the beginning, we can have limited participants and have a specific dialogue in each sector, and eventually we can open the door and connect that to the actual business.
There was a final comment from Professor Lee. And is there a way to separate the politics from the economics? Is there a way for the international cooperation? And we've been talking about the separation of the economics and the politics. We've been talking about that for a long time, and there was some outcome. However, because of the nuclear outcome, we have the nuclear sanction, which means the separation is not possible. So, actually, within the military framework, the economic activities are taking place, and that's not going to be possible. Anyway, we needed to finish on time, and let me conclude the final session of the 2021 for the KGFP. This was the session number 11. Thank you very much for participation. President Kang and President Jeon Sang-ji, thank you very much, and also all the presenters and the discussants, thank you very much. And for the 3 days, there are lots of the technicians and the staff members and the translators. Thank you very much.